Peter's Box. Life is for the living.
Hi, my name is Senam Akubida. I am a writer. I'm known in the writing circles as Akuvi Aguedze. I'm also a digital marketer. I do my best to help businesses improve their online presence and establish it as well. So that's who I am.
Hello, Aku.
Hi.
It's an honor finally meeting you.
It's a privilege.
And you know why it's an honor meeting you?
No.
Because I also write.
Nice.
So it's interesting to always have people in your circles
Right.
and have conversations with them. So thank you for honoring this invitation
Thank
and this warm reception.
Thank you for coming.
And I should have been at your book launch, your recent book launch, but for some reasons I wasn't there. But I'm here today, so we'll trash it out.
Sure.
Is the name Akubida or Akuvi Aguedze?
The name is both. The name is Senam Akubida, and the name is also Akuvi Aguedze. Senam Akubida is the name that I was given when I came on earth by my parents. Akuvi Aguedze is the name I took upon myself as a writer because I'm trying to distinguish my writing career from my personal life, in the sense that I want people to be able to see Senam, the digital marketer, and also see Akuvi, the writer and poet. Akuvi, Senam, same people, different careers.
But what do you prefer to be called? If a reader of your book meets you, would you prefer to be called Akuvi or Aku?
I'm sure if a reader of my book meets me, they'll call me Akuvi because that will definitely be the name on the book. So Akuvi, Aku, I don't mind any name that anybody.
So you chose that name yourself, or
Yes, I
it's
chose.
actually part of your native?
No, I chose Akuvi Aguedze myself. Aku, I'm already Aku.
Yeah.
So Akuvi means little Aku, and I'm a twin.
Oh.
So Akuvi because my twin sister is Akuga, and then Aguedze because I always think about the fact that my writings are going to go global. My writing is what's going to make a name for me. I want to do something to honor my mother. What's the best way to do that than to name her after an entity that I create, or a different personality, or somebody that I create? So Aguedze is my mother's name.
Okay.
And I have taken it upon myself. Apart from that, it's a name that speaks to me every day. Aguedze means risen sun. So when the sun rises, everyone say Aguedze, like the sun has come out. So for me, it's a prophecy that I constantly repeat to myself. Others also repeat to me when they call me by that name.
Interesting. You keep mentioning you're a digital marketer.
Mm-hmm.
How then did you end up writing?
I've always been writing. I've been writing, no, not since I was born, but I've been writing for a long time. I've always expressed myself better in writing. Even at the age of 6, I was writing letters to my kindergarten teacher to tell her about my experiences in class 1. So I've always been able to communicate myself better in writing. So I've always been a writer.
The term writer suggests so many things.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a writer and not an author. You can be a writer and not a poet. It depends on exactly what you're looking at. So when you use the word writer, in what sense of the word are you using the word writer? Which genre of writing do you?
I think writer encompasses everything. A poet is just someone who has decided to take that aspect of writing seriously, that has decided to be known for that genre of writing. So whether you call me a writer or a poet, it's still the same thing. Most people who write but are just writing articles or books are people who can also do poetry if you have studied. Chimamanda writes very good poetry, but she doesn't call herself a poet. She calls herself a writer.
But what genre do you specialize? Do you have a particular genre you focus? Poetry.
Yes, poetry. I can do all other things a writer does, but I love poetry.
Why do you love poetry?
Because poetry gives you the opportunity to say things you want to say without saying them. And so in a society where you are chastised or you are shamed, you are rebuked for saying things that you are not expected to say, especially as a woman, as a girl growing up, I couldn't really I wasn't really allowed to express myself, say what's on my mind. Even when you put it in writing, plain English, people will catch it, right? So what's the best way to hide what you are really feeling? In metaphors. And that's in poetry.
Does it mean poetry is something to grasp with? Is it something that is supposed to be difficult, supposed to be cagey, and hide certain messages? Is that the essence of poetry?
I think poetry is like, it's like an ore. So when you're mining gold, you don't just get the gold immediately, right? You get the ore before you work around it, before you get the gold. So that's just how poetry is for me. So the message is embedded always in a poem. That's why in school, when we're learning poetry, we always try to find out what the author is saying, using these metaphors, what does it mean, and all those things. So poetry can be cagey, it can be open, depends on how you want it to be. When you listen a lot to spoken word poetry or free line or free verse, so you realize that it's mostly in plain language. But then when you go deeper and you listen to a lot of other poems, like someone who has sat down to take their time to put a message in a poem, everything is metaphorical. There's the use of objects to signify other things and all those. So it depends. It depends on what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Do you remember the first poem you wrote?
Yes, but I don't have it offhand. I know what it was about.
What was it about?
I know it was about a guy I was crashing on.
Okay.
And most poets start as love poets. And that's the thing that's
speaking to me.
So when I say that you grow up not being able to say the things you want to say, that's what I mean. You have all these feelings, but you are so young. How are you going to communicate it? And when you do, they'll beat you. So as someone who has learned, who is interested in writing, and you are learning, you find a way to put it in a poem form. To hide what you are really feeling, even if it's anger. Yeah.
What topics are you passionate about that you try and convey in your poems?
Okay, so for now, I'm passionate about women's issues. I'm passionate about issues that has to do with discovering God. I'm passionate about issues of personal struggles. So lifestyle, women's issues, and religion. I don't want to say Christianity because some of my poems about God are not exactly Christian. There are a lot of questions, doubts that's being conveyed. So most importantly, women's issues, then personal struggles, and then religion. But then, of course, I started as a love poet.
What motivated you to focus on women's issue? Was it a personal experience or something that you saw and you decided to hone in on?
So I wouldn't say it's a personal experience. I would say it was an awakening, sort of. So, during the time of Pepperding, the social media feminism wave that happened in 2018, 2019, that was a time that for someone who was already interested in such issues, I go more towards that. And then you have these people who are telling their stories, who are flipping the script, they are giving you better perspectives, and you are looking at everything and you're realizing that this is actually an issue I can talk about. And before then, it always felt like, why do you want to talk about it? It always felt like I didn't really have the courage to focus on it. But then that whole thing that happened gave me a lot of courage to pursue women's issues.
Your normal day as a poet, when you sit down to write a poem, what happens? Do you keep quiet and listen to your inner voice? Do you start with a message and you try and devolve to the bigger picture? Or how do you go about it?
So before I'm sitting down to write a poem, I must have taken weeks to mentally work on the poem. You know, maybe something caught my attention while I was going out, and then I'm thinking about that. A line drops in my head. I'm following a conversation, and then a line drops in my head. I'm watching a movie or listening to music, and a line drops in my head. That particular line is something that I would meditate on. I would work around. I would try to understand. I would ask several questions on write before I would sit down to write. So by the time I'm writing, I'm not now coming to think about what I'm writing. Everything is going to flow because I had already written the poem in my head.
Do you write for your fulfillment or for the fulfillment of the reader? How do you?
It depends on what I'm writing about. If I'm writing about my personal struggles, I'm writing for my fulfillment. If I'm writing on issues like women's issues, I'm writing for the reader. I expect that the reader will be able to relate to what I'm writing. But if it's a personal struggle, it's just for me.
About how many poems have you written?
Hey, Peter, this question, this book is my recent new book. It's actually the first poetry collection that I have.
Oh, meaning you have other books?
I have one book that is not only poetry, that has to do, it's essays and poems. Okay, so let's say this book has about 60 poems. So if this book has about 60 poems, or let's say 50 poems, imagine how many poems I had to write to arrive at this.
Yeah.
I had to write hundreds.
Wow.
So I can't tell you I have written 500 poems. I've written a lot of poems.
Which poem falls under your favorites?
So there's a poem I wrote called Black Gold. That's the poem that falls under my favorites, and it's a poem it's published in a collection I worked with, Aya the Resilient. Next to that is a poem I wrote for Tsoo Boi that was published by Tamped Press in Ghana. It was about the sea defense issue and the flooding issue in the Volta region, which was my home. Which is my home. You know, my father's home, where I can confidently say this is my hometown, this is my family house, is no longer there. It's deep in the sea. So it's gone. If I go to Keji right now, I don't have a place. So that issue was really dear to my heart when it was happening, I think in a couple of years ago. So I wrote a poem and it got published. So those are the two poems that. So unfortunately, if you want to receive those poems, you have to buy I Am the Resilient or you buy Tsoo Boi published by Tamped Press.
Did you study to become a poet?
That's a serious question. I did not go to school to study to become a poet, but I'm constantly learning how to become a poet. A couple of years ago, I took a course on Coursera, poetry. I loved the course.
Do you have any particular habits that or routines that you go through when you are writing a poem? Do you have a special place you like to sit? Do you like to play music? What is it like for you?
No, I don't have any. Like I said, when I haven't written for a long time and I want to write, I trigger. Okay, so if you're asking for what I do to get myself to write after not writing for a while, what I do is I watch a movie or I listen to songs. I listen to podcasts. I've listened to several podcasts on poetry. I've forgotten most of the names because I don't keep that in mind. So I usually watch a movie about race, women, or the American Civil War. You know, those are the kind of movies I watch. Or songs that evoke certain emotions.
Which emotions are you trying to evoke?
It depends. When I have been suppressing anger for a while, I don't listen to music. When I have been suppressing the feeling of sadness, I listen to music. But anger, I have to watch a movie, a movie around race, a movie around women's issues, and stuff like that. So writing, I don't really have a routine.
Speaking
for
about
writing poetry.
speaking
But
about,
I'm constantly reading.
Speaking about the emotions, are there some emotions that always have to show up in your poems? Is there a recurrent theme when it comes
It
to
depends on what topic I'm writing on. When I'm writing on women's issues, you're likely to see anger. You're likely to see pain or a certain level of bitterness. You're likely to see hope. The feelings of hope, the feelings of trying to evoke a certain sense of peace and healing. This book, for instance, is in 3 parts. And is it 3 or 4 parts? The last part is titled Healing. All the poems in that part are stuff that are supposed to evoke the feeling of healing, the feeling of being at peace, the feeling of hope, that things will get better.
Is it that society doesn't understand the struggles that women go through? Because as you mentioned, there was Pepperdam Ministries and all that, and you're also trying to convey some kind of message on feminism. Is it that society, or let me say men, because usually it is the
men and women. Now women also who don't get it. But I don't think society does not understand. I think society just doesn't want to confront these issues because it feels like it wouldn't really add anything, When men have been in positions of influence and power for a long time and have run things to favor them, it's not easy to suddenly start focusing on women's issues at that level. You understand? So I don't think that it's an issue of I don't understand or society doesn't understand. It's an issue of we don't care.
So which of your poems have made someone care? Have you had any feedback from someone that says that your poem changed the way I think about this?
Yes, I've had feedback since publishing this. It's been 1 week and I've had people sharing posts, people coming, messaging me on my WhatsApp messenger, telling me the book has changed their perspective. The book has really made them think. Some of them are saying they are crying, and I'm very sorry for that. I've been apologizing for that ever since. I'm very sorry. It's not my intention to make you cry. That's why I have a disclaimer before you start reading. So I can't say that this particular poem I wrote, I've had someone come to you to say that it changed their mind, but it's always a collection. It's always a collection. Last year around this time, I published Of a Woman and Her Becoming, and I had people also coming to tell me that it was an empowering book for them to read.
What has been your most challenging poem? Which poem gave you that tough time? I think I read on your status that there was a particular poem that you take a day to write a line.
I think it's here.
It's here, okay.
I think it's here, and it should be in Screen. The section titled Screen. I don't think I want to read it. People should get a book to read it. So, sometimes you are writing and you know what you want to write about, but as you are writing, the kind of feelings that you are getting from writing this is difficult. There are points that I write and I'm crying, and it's not just me. A lot of other poets have mention the same thing. There are poems that I'm writing and I'm so excited. I want to hurry up and share it. But this particular one I wrote, it was hard for me. It was really hard.
Does it mean that there are times that you experience some sort of blank period? I think they call it writer's block, where
I no longer believe in writer's block.
Okay, you don't believe it?
I used to believe that there was something like writer's block, but I no longer believe in writer's block. I think writer's block is as a result of not reading. So writer's block has to do with 2 or 3 things. The first thing that is on the top of my mind has to do with lack of information. When you don't have information on what you want to write about, what are you going to write? You understand? Even if you have one word or one line, because you don't have information on that topic, it will be difficult to write. So you think that you have a writer's block. Number 2 is confidence or courage. There are topics that are really hard to tackle. And sometimes you want to write about it, but you don't have the courage to write because you feel like it's not your place to write it. Or you feel like, what if someone sees it and misinterprets what you have written? So these 2 things, it's 3 things, but I've forgotten the third one. But these 2 things are the most important things. When you're having a writer's block, ask yourself, what do I want to write about? Whatever you want to write about, go and trigger it. Read, watch a movie, an informative movie, an educational movie, listen to something, a podcast, something. Just inform yourself. You realize that after you have done that, you will suddenly get ideas. So it's lack of ideas. That's what causes writer's block.
Do you have some poets you look up to or who influence your work?
Yes. In Ghana, for instance, I look up to Poetry and Santiwa. I really look up to Poetry and Santiwa. And then I also look up to Maya Angelo. Maya Angelo is a phenomenal person.
What do you like about her?
I like her story. You know, she was abused. She didn't speak for 5 years. But when she started speaking, so many things came out of it. Books, performances. So many things came out of her story. Then there was one lady, nun, that I read about. Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. She's a Mexican nun that lived a long time ago. She advanced the cause of women through poetry and drama. And most of her staff were burned by the church. She was a Catholic nun. So when I discovered her, I was a Catholic and I was just so much in love with what she did. So yeah, those are the 3 people.
You also mentioned you write about God.
Yes, I write.
What is it about God that you feel is important to share?
Most of the things I write about God are questions. I'm constantly questioning the existence of God. I'm constantly questioning the idea of God. I'm constantly questioning, why doesn't Jesus Christ look like me? Or like my African brother? Why does he have to look like a white person?
Where do these questions come from?
It came from learning that God created me in his image and likeness. It's in the Bible. So if that's the case, why is that a lot of pictures I'm seeing are not of Jesus Christ or God with black skin? And also the existence of God. If God truly exists, or there's a heaven somewhere we are supposed to go to, why did we have to come here first? Why did we have to come? Why didn't we just stay there with him? What are we coming? What's the purpose of this world? Why do we need to transition from here to there? Come from there, come here, die, go back there. I don't know if you get it, but
I understand you. Did these questions also happen at a young age or is a more recent development?
Oh, no. I've always had these questions. Sometimes you ask, you get new revelations, but then they keep coming back due to things that happen in the world, due to things you hear. You know, when Christianity, for example, is so divided. One person is saying this, another person is saying that. So you are constantly asking questions. Which one is the right one?
Do you think you ever find the answers?
I don't think we are supposed to find the answer. I think God is like a woman.
What does that mean?
You don't seek to understand him. You just have to love him.
So what if God was a man?
I don't know about that.
All right.
I don't know about God being a man. I don't know.
Now, your latest book, If My Body Could Scream,
Yes.
that's a very visceral title. Why that title?
So this book started as Scream. Just Scream. When you have to publish a piece of work like this, you have to do a lot of research. And so I did a lot of research on the title Scream. I went to Google Scream. And I got so many results. And I kept asking myself, do I want my book to be lost in the midst of all that? Or I want it to be unique. I want it to be found. So I kept praying and pondering over it. So I would go and Google Scream, poetry, Scream, novel, Scream, or I'll go and Google books on sexual abuse, books on women issues. Then one time I Googled, I saw one that said, If My Body Could Speak. And that was it. That was it. And it stood out, If My Body Could Speak. It stood out to me. I don't want to mention the author's name, but it was one of those poets with button poetry. So I just said, what if I name mine If My Body Could Scream? And it just clicked.
All right. Now, with how you used to write letters to your class teacher, asking questions, telling your teacher about what was happening around you, and you asking a lot of questions, you wanting to communicate something, would you say you're talkative? Are you a fiery person, or you're an introvert?
I used to make it to the talkative list with DP.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think age has a way of revealing your true self. I have probably always been an introvert, but I have used talking as a way of fighting for myself, as a way of protecting myself. Because introverts are usually attacked and bullied, So somehow my mind just felt like when you're out there, when you're loud, you are able to let people know that they can't mess with you. So growing up, I was known as a talkative, but now I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all. I'm an introvert. I'm a very big introvert. Last time my sister-in-law was saying that, do you know you're an introvert? I said, yes, I know. I am an introvert. But then if I have to be out there, I can't do that. So I can be an extrovert, I can be an introvert, but I'm mainly an introvert.
Is there a poem out there, maybe by a particular author, that resonates with you very well? There's no way you can ever forget about that poem.
That's not true. I forget about things.
Forget about things, okay.
I forget about things.
Okay, does it mean that sometimes you can forget about your own poem?
Yes.
It happens.
Yes. I don't have a very good memory. That's why I took to writing and keeping a diary.
Oh.
So I have all my diaries from class 6. I don't have a very good memory. And I think it was something that I did intentionally to myself, because I realized that the more I keep things to memory, the more they hurt me. So as a way of releasing those things, I would keep a diary and then write all those things down. And the moment I write it, it's gone. If I want to let something go, I have to write it. I have to write it in a poem form, or I have to enter it as a journal. And once I do that, it's gone. And so I have unintentionally trained my mind to forget. to forget things. So there are poems that really resonate with me, that I have read, that I have enjoyed, that I have thought about and meditated on. But the moment I move on from it, that's it.
Do you enjoy reading your poems? Or let me put it this way. Do you find a lot of fulfillment in reading out your poems just as you write them? Do you also do, or let me put it this way, the spoken word type of thing, are you able to also do that, or yours is strictly I write my poem?
No, I do spoken word.
You do spoken word?
Yes. I do spoken word. So when I started taking my poetry serious, I started with spoken word. So in 2016, I was doing spoken word. I do spoken word a lot. But unfortunately, I'm at a point where I can't really keep things to memory. You know, I want to blame baby brain after having my son. Yes, but then I can perform. At my book launch, I performed while I was reading. Yeah, but I don't want to perform and make it look so much like I'm reading. So I usually rehearse.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I'm just making references.
Do you get a lot of criticism about your poem, especially the negative ones? How do you deal with them when you hear a particular feedback that doesn't really sit well with you? Do you take it as, oh, that's just their opinion, or do you actually investigate to find out what made them say that?
Wow, you've asked me a very serious question. I don't remember ever getting criticism about my work.
Or
Public, unless I'm in a workshop. So the only times I've had have always been in workshops. Yes. And so you're in a workshop, you learned how to do something, maybe how to how to create pictures of the things that you are trying to see, and you have to practice. So when you practice, it has to go around for everyone to share their opinion and say, oh, you did this well, but you could have done this better. So yeah, I take criticisms very well. I think that they're important if you want to grow as a writer. They're very important.
do you believe everyone can write?
Yes.
Everyone can write.
Yes.
And is there anything like good poetry and bad poetry?
No.
No.
There's just poetry.
There's just poetry.
There's just poetry. There's just poetry.
You've never read any poem and you're completely lost. You're like, what did I just? You have.
I have.
Would you consider
But
that?
I feel like I have. But I feel like other people may have also listened to that poem and felt, oh, this is good poetry. I can't use my experiences to judge someone else.
Okay. So let me put you on the spot. The poem that I forwarded you, when you read it, what came into your mind? Or let me put it this way, what did you think about me after reading the poem? Were you able to deduce
So
something?
when I read the poem, let me tell you the truth. I was like, is this guy telling me he loves me? I was like, is this a love poem to me? I really liked the poem, honestly. I told you it was a beautiful piece. I liked it. It was a journey from the beginning. It was like you carried me from one point to B, and it was a smooth journey. And then I think there was a point where I didn't expect how that part went. I can't really remember whether it was the middle part or the last part, but then there was a point like that, and that was the twist to the whole thing. That's really God's.
What would be your advice to someone who thinks, I really am not at that level of a poet, I want to get there, I'm still learning? What would be your words of encouragement to someone who's aspiring to be a poet?
I think it's a personal journey. I can't be the one to tell you I'm not there yet. It's something you tell yourself, So you have to figure out who you are looking up to. Okay. The person you are looking up to can be your source of guidance. So it means that whatever the person has achieved, you have to achieve that or even more. than that. Maybe when you get to that level, that's when you feel like you have arrived. But most importantly, there is no point of arrival. Everything is a journey in different phases, in different seasons. One point you are feeling completely lost. You are feeling like you're a beginner. You are feeling like, I'm not so good at this. Another point you are feeling like, wow, I did this. Like how I feel when I look at this book. I keep thinking, you did it. You are there. You know.
How did you feel after you finished and it was ready? You were told that the book is ready. You can now set your launch date. How did you feel?
The way I did my work, I set the launch date even before the book was ready. And for me, that was like prophesying to myself that this thing will happen, whether you like it or not. So the moment I set the date, I was like, wow. The moment I got the sample copy, I was like, wow. And then at the launch day, I was sitting at the back, I was looking at everything going on, and I was just thanking God. So I felt grateful, really.
You mentioned that you work as a digital marketer. So what are some of the services that you offer, and what exactly do you do? If someone wants to reach out to you as a digital marketer, what should they expect?
I offer social media management services. I offer website design, website management, and I also do email marketing as well. Or I can just do content creation for you. Basically, that's just, but then I have this 90 days package, which is me managing your social media pages for 90 days for your business or for yourself. That's currently the product or the package that I'm running.
So if someone wants to reach out to you, do you prefer them to go through email, or you want them to go through your social media handles?
I think if you are doing social media marketing, social media handle should be fine. But you can contact me on 024-019-3273, and that's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, Aguedze. I like how the name sounds.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Aguedze.
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 Yes.
Okay. I like how the name sounds. It's been an honor meeting you.
Thank you.
Getting to understand your world, how writing goes for you. I've learned a lot because I myself I write, so it's interesting hearing your perspective. And congratulations for publishing a book, because I know it's not an easy thing.
It is not.
Taking the time to sit down and write.
Yes, and having to take out a lot of pieces from the book because they don't fit or they don't flow.
Exactly. So congratulations once again. And should we expect another collection?
Yes, next year.
Next year. Okay.
So last year I released Of a Woman in Her Becoming. It was just 20 poems. But next year I'm publishing more than that.
Wow.
So let's do this again next year.
Okay, surely. It's been a pleasure having you on Peter's Box.
Thank you so much.
I wish you all the best in your career.
But I hope to do an independent work with Poetry Santua. Something that is going to be just me and here.
What does she really do?
She's a poet. She's a poet, a singer, and a writer.
What does it really talk about?
She also talks about women's issues, but she talks about everything else.
Okay.
And she's more of a protest writer. I don't know whether she would call herself a protest writer, but she does more of that. At least those are the things I have followed her in.
Okay. So thank you so much, and hopefully next year we'll meet again.
Yes, we will. We will meet before next year.
Sure, definitely. All right.
Peter's Box. Life is for the living.